Ready? Okay. Hi everyone, we're going to get started. So we've got quite a packed agenda. There are 4 speakers. We're going to make time for Q&A and discussion, so I'm going to dive straight into it. So this session is about supporting moderators at the Wikimedia Foundation. So this is about the work that we're doing over the coming year that we hope will particularly aimed at supporting moderators and experienced contributors. So, as mentioned, we've got 4 speakers from 4 different product teams at the foundation, all working on different projects. I'll let them introduce themselves when they come through to their slides. But first, I wanted to mention what do I mean by moderators, because that's not a term we tend to use in the Wikimedia movement. It's used in a lot of other contexts, a lot of other online communities, but for whatever reason, we never ended up using the term in Wikimedia projects. So what we mean is kind of users that have extended rights of some kind. So they're stewards, they're functionaries, administrators, patrollers, the kinds of people that I see partially well represented in this room, who kind of look after the project, review edits, write policy, deletion discussions, all that sort of stuff. Not necessarily the newcomers or people focused on creating content. So that's what I mean whenever I say moderators for the rest of today. And this is kind of a focus for us this year at the foundation in terms of our product initiatives. We've focused a lot on growing the number of new contributors, the amount of new content over the last years, and I'm not slighting any of that work, but we have generally not focused as much on the administrators, the patrollers. That's definitely been lacking somewhat over the last few years. But we recognize that's a really important part of how Wikimedia projects operate. We can't have all these new contributors coming in and adding new content without also thinking about how those edits are reviewed, how those articles are patrolled, how they get support. And so we want to really kind of focus on that this year. There's a key result text that I won't read in its entirety here that's in our annual plan. The aim this year is to improve the experience of editors with extended rights. We want to improve a number of workflows aimed at these sorts of users. We want to do so, there's a little term in there that says extend their creativity. We don't want these to be kind of constrained workflows. We want them to be things that you can customize and engage with and really make your own. And we're going to work with moderators in general to figure out how do we figure out if these things were successful? What metrics do we want to measure? So the agenda is we're going to go through each of these teams and the projects they're working on this year. We've got about 5 to 10 minutes per team kind of presentation on what they're prioritizing this year. And then we'll kind of leave things open for Q&A, for discussion, to kind of see what you think and have a chat. So first up is Kirsten from the growth team.
Hello. Growth team is probably not the team you normally think of working on moderator tools. We generally focus on tools for newcomers and new account holders. However, over the last couple years, the growth team has developed what is called community configuration features that help communities customize how growth features work on their wikis. And we feel like this feature is really powerful and that other teams and other engineers would really benefit from this. So the project that I'm going to be talking to you about today is community configuration, which is a tool mainly directed at admins, although that is a tool that could be opened up, could potentially be available to other user groups as well in the future, depending on what the feature is for. So before I go too far, let me just ask a real controversial question here. What drives you nuts about the Wikimedia Foundation? And we probably don't actually have time to go through and list all the things. However, I bet a lot of you would mention some things that might fit into one of these 3 themes. The slow pace of software development. Sometimes it feels like there's insufficient transparency and communication between the community and the Wikimedia Foundation staff. Sometimes there's a lack of community involvement in decision making. It feels like, we've developed features and kind of decided for communities how they're going to work and that sort of thing. So I cannot solve all of these things, but I do believe that community configuration is a tool that can help take a step in the right direction and move us to a future where communities are empowered to configure features developed by the Wikimedia Foundation to kind of really work for their community. Because we acknowledge that, every wiki has unique needs and a unique user base. So community configuration 1.0 is a special page. It's edit growth config, and it is already available on all Wikipedias. The basics of it is it's a simple form that any admin can edit to adjust how the growth features work on the wiki. So it empowers the community to customize tools based on their unique needs, and it's very easy to use. It's just, basically a form that you make some changes and save. You don't need to have any technical knowledge to make these changes, and once an admin makes a change, it updates the associated JSON configuration file. So it's really powerful. And I feel like sometimes eyes glaze over a little bit when I talk about community configuration without providing concrete examples of what it is and how it can be used. So I'm going to give you 3 different examples of how community configuration has been used in the past year. On Arabic Wikipedia, patrollers and moderators were feeling pretty overloaded and had a lengthy backlog of edits to review. And they decided to disable one of the newcomer tasks that the growth team has set up for newcomers. It's a really powerful task called add a link. It's not available on all wikis yet, but it basically helps newcomers. It increases the number of new accounts that actually move on to edit and increases their productivity, but that results in more edits. And sometimes there needs to be a balance between encouraging newcomers and also making sure that we're not overwhelming patrollers and moderators. So Arabic Wikipedia was able to, easily disable this task. It doesn't require a conversation with the growth team or, a request for changes or request for comment or anything like that. So another example is just recently, Swahili Wikipedia independently enabled mentorship features. They were able to do this without, any involvement from the growth team or an engineer enabling the features. They were able to just, quickly fill out the form and opt into it, and also set up how it works on the wiki. So they're able to customize the requirements for who can be a mentor, since all wikis are going to have a different version of who they think is qualified enough to provide mentorship. Third and final example is that an RFC was avoided on English Wikipedia. There's some concerns about the copy edit task. The reality is that any admin can go in and disable this task if it's causing problems, or admins can update the templates that are associated with articles that populate this task. There's the ability also to update and avoid articles that contain certain templates or categories. And admins can also decide what is the associated help page that we should surface to newcomers who are completing this task. So hopefully that gives you an example of how this has been used in the past for growth features. There's various successes I want to just quickly mention. It definitely empowers communities to make decisions that work for their wiki. It's usable by any admin. You don't need to be a technical contributor or engineer to make updates to the JSON configuration, which I think can be very powerful. There's a transparent edit history, so it's clear when a change was made and who made that change. And then the last 2 bullet points are maybe a little bit more hidden and visible to the growth team side of things, but it does definitely increase our speed of scaling features. It is a challenge to roll out features that work for all language versions of Wikipedia. It's impossible really to make a good feature that's going to be great on a huge wiki and a small wiki. And so community configuration acknowledges that we need to work with communities and figure out what are communities going to want to customize. It makes working with communities a much more integral part of the product development process. And like I said, it helps increase the speed at which we can scale the features that we develop, because, we can scale to all wikis and let the wikis decide if they want to keep the feature enabled or disabled, customize it to work better for their wiki, that sort of thing. However, there are definitely some limitations with community configuration right now. Limited discoverability. I bet there's a lot of you here that have never heard about community configuration or the special page. In fact, can I see a show of hands? Has anybody in this room actually updated community configuration? No, no hands. Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's a little bit hidden. It is a feature that right now only impacts growth features for newcomers. So it is, something that more experienced editors often don't even know about right now. So definitely a key limitation right now. It isn't currently designed really to scale well. It is like a list of growth features that, you can't search through, or it's not, organized in a very logical way. There needs to be some improvements and design UX improvements for sure. No external access. So what that means is, the mobile apps and, external extensions can't access it or depend on it reliably. And right now it is limited to the growth experiments extension. So, that's a major limitation that is only available for growth features right now. However, we are hoping to work on what we are calling Community Configuration 2.0, which we hope to address some of those limitations. We hope to increase discoverability. We hope to improve the design and architecture and make sure it's more scalable. And we want to make sure that it can be utilized and relied on outside of growth experiments extension, so that other product teams, other external engineers can utilize configuration easily. There's a central place and standards for setting up community configuration. And of course, we want to have robust validation and error checks so that, if a mistake is made on the form, it's not breaking anything for users. So next steps, we are very early stages of this right now. We're just in the planning discovery phase. We're gathering feedback from communities and current users of Community Configuration 1.0. We're starting to consult with technical stakeholders, both internally at the foundation and external technical stakeholders, and then we will be starting a technical RFC that provides, the more technical details of what we're proposing, and make sure that the community and all technical stakeholders have the ability to provide feedback on this plan. I think, that is my last slide. But I would definitely encourage you, we're at this early phase where we definitely want feedback from people. So if you want to learn more, please either, check out the Associated Fabricator Epic or the Community Configuration 2.0 page on MediaWiki, and, join the discussion or watch. We would love to have more feedback. So I'm going to pass it along to Sam now.
Cool. Thanks, Kirsten. So I'm going to talk about a project that will maybe use community configuration next year. We sort of realized that this product was going to need a lot of configuration from the community, so we think probably we'll end up plugging into that system. So the project is called Auto Moderator, and the idea is, as I'm sure many of you know, on Wikimedia projects, there's a lot of very silly vandalism, the kind of drive-by stuff that just takes up your time reviewing. It's very unambiguous. You don't need to have a lengthy discussion about reverting it, but it takes up your time anyway. This kind of problem just sort of adds to that workload for patrollers across our communities. On fewer than 10 Wikimedia projects, there is a kind of anti-vandalism bot that's been developed to kind of solve some of that problems. Some communities use abuse filter, though not that many. But these anti-vandalism bots are volunteer maintained. They're things that individuals are needing to sort of keep up with and ensure they keep running. And many of our communities would love to have one of those, but simply don't have the technical volunteer in their community who can go and work on that. So the sort of hypothesis that our team came up with for this year is if we enable communities to automatically revert obvious vandalism, then moderators, patrollers particularly, will have more time to spend on other activities. So effectively, if we can provide you with a thing like an anti-vandalism bot, then that workload will reduce. The patrollers and administrators that were previously having to go through some of these more clear-cut cases of vandalism will be able to spend their time in more productive ways, in better ways that more utilize your brain power rather than just sort of clicking the undo button on this obvious nonsense. So the project is currently called Auto Moderator. I'm very open to name suggestions. It's not ideal, but the idea is that we will develop a piece of software that allows this sort of automated detection and reverting of this obvious vandalism and provide this kind of configuration so that you can figure out exactly how it's going to work on your wiki, which is kind of the piece where we think community configuration will plug in. So this is a sketch of the sorts of things that we might imagine adding to that configuration. Things like whether it's turned on or not. I mean, we're not going to force this on anyone. Where you want to set the threshold for this system. Obviously, I'll talk about this in a second, but we're going to use a machine learning model, and so there's going to be some level of false positives involved there. That's sort of inevitable. But we want to make sure that communities have sort of fine-grained control and review over where that threshold is going to be, how many false positives are acceptable versus how many vandalism edits are going to be reverted. And then there's a long tail of potential other configuration options that we'll need to figure out and explore with community members. If you have ideas, I'm all ears, but we might imagine things like giving you control over the edit summary, over maybe the tool posts a talk page notice to the person it's reverting. Maybe we exclude certain user groups from ever being impacted by this. I'm sure there's a long list of things that we might include there, but we're very open to making sure that this is a tool that communities want to turn on and feel like they have control over, and isn't just something that like the foundation is saying you have to turn this thing on, how we see it working. So it's going to use some new machine learning models. You might be familiar with the ORES models. There's a few that are used in some of the existing anti-vandalism bots, the damaging model, the good and bad faith models. The research team at the foundation has been working on some new models. They think that they are better than ORES, the sort of analysis shows so far, at figuring out which edits should be reverted and which shouldn't. And one of the most powerful things is that they're language agnostic, so they work across, hypothetically, currently all Wikipedia projects, and I think maybe Wikisource at the moment, but we could train it on other Wikimedia communities as well. So the sort of goals for us with this project really are to primarily reduce moderation backlogs by sort of preventing those bad edits from ever being in your patroller queue. You know, if you're using Huggle or looking at recent changes, avoiding you ever seeing these bad edits that are very obvious and can just be reverted by the tool. We want to make sure that moderators have confidence that auto moderation is reliable and that it's not producing significant false positives. Obviously, I think for me personally, this is the biggest question mark I have at the moment about this project is, will these models even be good enough? You know, maybe there'll be too many false positives. So that's something we're going to have to look at closely. I think if the project is going to succeed, we want to make sure that those false positive numbers are at an acceptable level. But lastly, like I said, false positives are going to happen, and so we want to make sure that editors who are caught in a false positive have that clear avenue to go and report that false positive and make sure that it can be reviewed by someone. And hopefully have that not be too much work, right? And kind of, it would be sort of pointless if that was just as much work as you reviewing the edit in the first place. So in terms of the roadmap, the idea is that by this December, we're hoping to enable editors to sort of test the machine learning models that we're using. So we're not going to sort of dive straight into extension development. We're going to develop some simple tool that gives you the chance to see how the model would work, what edits would it revert, so that we can start collecting some feedback and data on what you think about that. ultimately, if you look at that tool and you say the false positive rate is simply too high, then cool, we'll go work on something else. We're not against that. But I think that'll help us really figure out how this could work hypothetically. And then in the new calendar year, we'll start testing Auto-Moderator with some pilot Wikipedias. We're working with Indonesian Wikipedia and hoping to work with one or two others when we actually start developing the tool for real. And obviously from there, we'll sort of iterate and figure out when other communities are happy to sort of start using it. If you want to learn more, you can go to mediawiki.org. There's 2 pages you might be interested in. The first one is a more in-depth overview of the project, going a bit beyond what I've talked about today. There's also a bunch of open questions there we have about how you think about the project, what concerns you might have, what questions you might have. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the talk page there. And then secondarily, we have a newsletter. We haven't actually sent any issues of it yet, but I will. If people sign up to it, then I will start sending some newsletters out so that you can stay sort of up to date with the project without just needing to watch those pages. That's me. I'm going to hand over to Jasmine now. It's pretty late in the US, so Jasmine has recorded her presentation. She will be around for questions afterwards, but I'm hoping we can pull up the video here.
Hello everyone, my name is Jasmine Tanner and I am the lead product manager for the official Wikipedia apps. I'm excited to discuss the steps we are taking to reduce barriers for patrolling on mobile devices for users with extended rights, specifically those with sysops and rollback rights. Our motivation for bringing patrolling to the app has been driven by feedback from our community. Advocacy for watchlists in the app has been heard through the App Store, our support emails, and community wish lists. I'm happy to share that watchlist is available on Android currently and will be available on iOS in the coming months. As we poured over our requests for adding watchlists, a theme continued to emerge of people sharing what elements were most important. Rollback, undo, and thanks were functions that were highlighted as important actions to take. When we dug further, we also noticed a general theme of people wanting to take action on vandalism when they may be in transit or generally from their mobile device, which expanded our thinking beyond watchlists. We understood tools like Huggle, Twinkle, and SW Viewer, just to name a few, existed already. However, there were specific requests to take some of those elements and integrate them into the Wikipedia app. Based on the feedback from members of the community and intensive comparative analysis we conducted on existing patrolling tools, we found the following opportunities. We can empower mobile users. It can be challenging to have multiple apps for multiple purposes, which is why we received requests to bring a tool in the official Wikipedia app and wanted to deliver on it. Additionally, through our research, the only tool that was found favorable with mobile users was SW Viewer. You will find our interface services quality scores to aid in determining if an edit is potentially damaging, and the tool allows filtering. Our toolbar also increases access to take swift action on a feed of recent edits, even if you are in transit. More importantly, we hope users of the tool are able to review more nuanced edits and provide the type of guidance that only humans can. Something that stood out when getting guidance on building our base version was the importance of it not simply gamifying reverts without feedback. Supporting folks that were trying to make a good faith edit and encouraging others that are doing great work was also important, which we hope translates in our designs. Another piece of feedback that surfaced from our research was having to create custom scripts for patrolling and that being a barrier for some folks. There is also the challenge that some language wikis did not feel supported with current tools. While V1 of our feature is purposefully basic starting out, we are aiming to add more workflows that make sense on mobile as we get feedback about our base version of the feature. Finally, we wanted to ensure that users could provide feedback to the model we are using to detect edits that are at risk of reverts so that it can continue to be improved over time. Human feedback for data models are of the utmost importance. Here is a demo of the first version of the tool, and I'd love to hear your feedback during Q&A. Users with sysops and rollback rights would access the patroller task through the suggested edits entry point. You will be able to filter edits, and some of these options should look familiar to you based on recent edits filters on web. You can also easily switch between languages should you have extended rights on more than one language wiki. Reporting issues and accessing user information is readily available in the list view as well as the diff view. You have the ability to create and store warning messages locally on your device for V1, and in future versions, we will explore adding preloaded templates based on what is commonly used and agreed upon across different language communities. Warning messages are posted to a user's talk page. We've nested rollback and undo based on feedback to not make it too easy to roll back. The 2 clicks add a visual barrier. If you want to continue to monitor and edit, you can add it to your watch list. And you can also swipe or click the buttons at the top to move to the next edit in your list. Think is also readily available, which is helpful for if you find a user has already gotten to revert something before you did. We believe by building this feature, we can increase moderator velocity across several language wikis, specifically when users are primarily using mobile devices. We recognize that not all patrolling is currently suitable for mobile, so we are focused on actions that are. We also believe we will reduce barriers for patrolling for less technical editors with extended rights. Secondarily, that feedback provided to the model when the score isn't quite right will serve as an input to help improve its accuracy over time. With all of these ambitious goals, how will we evaluate success? Well, I'm glad you asked. We plan to monitor satisfaction. This is a major indicator. Satisfaction of people using a tool, as well as those that receive engagement via the tool, will be something that we look at. There will be an indicator in the edit summary when an action is taken via the app patrolling tool. We will monitor engagement overall. How often are people using it and then abandoning it? We will also look at what affordances are people commonly using in case there is a request to change things around in the app, or to make the case for customizing your toolbar, something that actually currently exists in the app for the article view. We will look at the impact, specifically by viewing the media wiki history to get an idea of the impact quantitatively on content as compared to other patrolling tools. We will also evaluate how the feedback to our data models may be improving score accuracy and the adoption and acceptance rate across language wikis. Finally, we'll look at education. This is for our future version. We hope to build a training gym for expert editors who do not yet have extended rights, so that they can get a feel for patrolling and we will walk them through how to request those rights in a safe environment. That training task is something we absolutely must and will do in partnership with current patrollers with extended rights. Once we ensure the patrolling task for users with extended rights is nailed down, we will make sure that we create the proper bridge with the training task. Some web tools currently are open to users who do not have extended rights, but some of the most notable ones are only available to people with extended rights. This was a pain point that came up as a tension between the two groups, and we want to be tactful about addressing it. So where are we in our timeline? We are currently building V1 of patroller tasks and refining designs. We plan to release V1 in October in partnership with the Indonesian Wikipedia community, with support from our community ambassador, Bonaventura. As we learn from the release, we will reach out to Spanish, French, and Chinese Wikipedia about the prospect of making the feature available for those language wiki communities, with, of course, improvements that we learned from Indonesian Wikipedia. Dependent on those consultations, we hope to make the feature available for all sysops and rollbackers across language wikis by March of next year. And around that time, we want to start discussions about a training task. Feedback is a gift, and I deeply value connection. So thank you in advance for anything you may share in the Q&A section. If you'd like to stay up to date with the project or apps work in general, feel free to visit our Media Wiki project pages or to subscribe to our newsletter, which is available on Meta. And I'll now pass it off to the next presenter.
Thanks, Jasmine. Peter should be online, I think, as well.
Hello.
Hey, Peter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey. All right, cool. How's everyone doing? What's the vibe in the room? Yeah, nice. All right, cool. There we go. I'm jealous that y'all are there. I know Wikimedia is like such a, I don't know. I always found it to be so energizing.
Quick addition, Peter. Let me know when to move the slides, and I'll click you along.
Yes, I think that's my prepared remarks to start. Yeah, you can go to the slides. All right, cool. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kirsten. Thanks all for, spending time. I know there's like so many sessions and so many places you could be. So the fact that you're here with us is, awesome. So we're going to get into edit check, which is one of those kind of moderator focused or adjacent initiatives that we've all been kind of sharing in this session. And edit check specifically, we're kind of describing it as a way of offering people actionable feedback about policies while they're editing. People in this context is more so referring to people who are new to editing and people who are a little bit less experienced, and they're arriving on the wiki with an intuitive sense of what they want to change, but maybe not necessarily aware of the expectations that come with making a change of that sort. Sam, can you go to the next slide, please? And this project really sees itself as part of kind of like a long lineage of efforts that volunteers have made over the years that have tried to communicate with people who are new, to equip them with the information and they know how they need to make changes that they're proud of and that projects value and find useful. But the situation that we kind of see ourselves in is that, while we've lowered the technical barriers to contributing to our projects, our interfaces don't do the best job of making people aware of the policies that they're expected to follow. So here's like a kind of zoom in of Sitehood, which many of us are probably familiar with. And this person is essentially attempting to use Twitter as a source, which maybe if you've never edited before, makes total sense. Someone said something, I'm going to put that information in this place where there's a bunch of other information of this sort. Why wouldn't I use Twitter? But if you go to the next slide, Sam, you'll see, and I think that we're all aware, that we actually have more of a subtle opinion about what is deemed to be a reliable source in our context and what isn't. And so what ends up happening is that newcomers feel unwelcomed and really come to question whether Wikipedia is a place where they belong. So they arrive in some cases with really good intentions and then come to find that energy and effort is not really valued. So if you go to the next slide, Sam. And then on the flip side, this is a two-sided problem, right? Is that experienced volunteers then end up needing to spend time kind of patrolling edits and really trying to reach newcomers in opportune moments. But people seem to miss each other. And so when we think about edit check and talk about it internally, a lot of it is around timing. Like, how do we have the information that people are open to receiving and crucially motivated and equipped to apply it come at just the right moment? So if you go to the next slide, Sam. That's what we're trying to do with edit check. So the first kind of check that we're calling it is going to prompt people to add sources when they forget to do so. Sam, is it possible to hit play on that? I think it's going to take you to a different tab on Commons. Is it possible to do that? Yeah. And how am I going? Am I going too fast? I can't. Yeah, how's that feeling, the pacing? Can you hear me?
You're doing great. Yeah, thumbs up.
Okay, thank you.
We're just
Excellent,
figuring out
thank
if we can
you.
play the video.
Okay, cool. I thought that slide template this year was so good. I mean, it's always good, but it really, yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah, props to the designers.
Yeah. Oh, cool. All right, cool. So this is what the first kind of edit check is kind of going to be like on mobile. And you'll see here, so you're going to open up the visual editor on mobile, and just imagine you're kind of new and you're coming to the projects for the first time or few times, and naturally you're like, oh, this piece of information is missing, let me add it. You're used to contributing on other platforms where you don't necessarily have to cite your work. And in this case, the interface is going to prompt you to consider adding a reference because you neglected to do so or didn't even think that that's something that would be beneficial. And then you pretty much publish your edit. And again, we're really trying to figure out what the right moment is to intervene. And I'll go into kind of like timing and sequencing in a sec. Oh, beautiful transition, thank you. Next slide. So yeah, the kind of operating hypothesis or core assumption here is that if we can surface relevant feedback in the precious moments when people are actually editing and equipping them with kind of know-how and tools necessary to act on this guidance, we'll land at this intersection of people making changes that they're proud of. You know, they arrived to the wikis on their own to make these changes. And we want to, as best as we can, help them experience the joy, the satisfaction, the fulfillment, I think that we're all used to feeling when you make a contribution that improves the wikis and experience volunteers' value. And so that's why, like, nailing that moment is what I think a lot of the success of this project kind of rests on. If you go to the next slide, Sam. And yeah, two of the ways that we're kind of considering evaluating the success of this project, and I paused a little bit there because it's going to be more of a holistic evaluation for reasons that I'm not going to go into in this moment, but two of the things that we're looking at are, did the proportion of kind of edits that involve people adding new content, does the proportion of those that get reverted go down? And then crucially, of the new content edits that people make, do we see an increase in the proportion of those that actually include references? Next slide, Sam, please. And so the plan for this year is to try out a few checks and try out a few, quote, moments within people's editing experience. So if you hit the next slide, that's what we're trying to do. And one way that we think about this work is that if we take a very high-level view of how we moderate on the projects, and I'd be curious to see if this actually resonates with people, but I found it kind of instructive, is like, okay, we give people information before they edit. So we've got a ton of documentation. just before you get started, we've got edit notices. So that is kind of front loaded. You've got all this instruction that happens on the front. And then on the back side, we've got abuse filters. Of course, you can have an edit reverted. You can receive a message on your talk page when you've done something wrong or unexpected. And none of that is actually happening in the moment when you're in the midst of doing something and potentially motivated to make a different choice. And so this year, what we're doing and what those kind of yellow bars represent in that second diagram, who knows if it's effective of visualizing this, but yeah, can we intersperse bits of feedback and tools that could invite people to make choices that align with what they're motivated to do and crucially, what projects value and find useful. So that's kind of the core of it. If you go to the next slide, Sam, I think that might be it. Yeah, there's project updates. In hindsight, I think I should have used the wiki codes. I like that y'all did that, but the links are there. There's also going to be a session immediately following this one in the same room to talk about this project in more detail. But yeah, that's the gist. And yeah, thanks for tapping through the slides, Sam. And I think I'm all set.
Cool, thanks, Peter. Great, we have about 20 minutes, so plenty of time for questions and answers, discussion. There's the 4 projects that have just disappeared, but I hope you remember them. Feel free to ask any questions you might have, any sort of open topics that come to mind. And there are 2 mics kind of on either side of the room so that our remote speakers can hear us. So I guess feel free to head up to those and we can get started.
Thank you so much. You hear me? Okay. Thank you so much for the presentations. I have a question to Sam. How do you think about how different languages will have the quality of the tool, the quality of ML models will be impacted by different languages? So, for example, will it work better in English than in some other languages, and how are you approaching that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are actually 2 models that we're looking at using that the research team has been working on this year. Both of them provide a score for how likely an edit is to be reverted. One of them is fully language agnostic. It only uses metadata about the edit. So is it a new editor who's making their first edit to a long-standing page and they remove a bunch of text, for example? That it's likely to give that a big score, right? And so for that model, language should not be relevant. Obviously, we'll have to test that and see how it works in practice, but the idea is that that should work across all languages. There's a second model which integrates, I think, a large language model as part of it. It supports somewhere in the region of 45 languages. Many of the major languages, the biggest projects that we have are supported by that one. And that does everything the other model does, but then also integrates some analysis of what the text was that was either added or removed. And so we're going to have to evaluate that and see, how well does that work, how well does that perform versus the other one in practice. But our hope is that one should be more accurate and because it includes those other signals. And then kind of as we roll this tool out, we'll just have to kind of take it wiki by wiki and see, do those communities think this is accurate? Is it working for them? Are there quirks because of the language? And just kind of see how that goes, really.
Hi, for Kristen, sorry. Is the special page available for non-admins at this point in a read-only mode or not?
Yeah, so sorry, I realized after I stepped away, I never actually introduced myself. My name is Kirsten Stoller. The special page is visible to anybody on the wiki right now. It is only editable by admins at this point. But yeah, if anybody can navigate to that special page, edit growth config, to see what the current settings are. Does that answer your question?
Thanks.
Cool.
Right, so I actually have a question for the apps team with regards to the mobile tool for reverting edits. I just wanted to ask, is there any plans to integrate or communicate with how the current tools work for counter vandalism, especially the ones that only run currently on compute or the desktop, mainly because I was thinking there might be some duplication of work that's happening, and it'd be better to have like a centralized location for like warnings and things like that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. So for us ourselves, it would be really difficult to build that in isolation. I think if we were to have enough conversation with some of the outside developers that have created those external tools, and then show that there's a case to try and connect things like warning messages so there isn't a duplication, that there could be an API built for that that allows us to do that. So I think it's a great idea. It's something that I can bring up and also try to partner with other tools to see if it's possible. I can't make any promises within just the apps teams, just by the sheer nature of the type of development power we have within our team and the resources. But yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Right, so I have a question regarding community configurations. Specifically, you talked a lot about bringing stuff to Wikipedias. Would this also be usable by extension, say like proofread page, or like especially in wiki sources where, or wiki dictionary, wiki voyage, where configuration is there as well?
Yeah, good question. I didn't totally cover that because plans are still a little bit up in the air. But our initial plans, we are hoping that it is available to, other wikis, other extensions, that sort of thing. Discussions are still ongoing about that, whether or not like community configuration is something that we want to actually add to MediaWiki core, or is it a separate extension? Still to be determined. But yeah, that's definitely something we're thinking about. So yeah, thanks for that question.
Would it be okay to like, so I saw in the fabricator task that you are listing like some of the use cases. Would it be okay to say like put in a task for say proofread page would want to integrate with this at some point?
Yeah, please do. Add to that fabricator task, add a comment about, like what you're hoping to see or what extension you want to have support for, and we'll definitely consider it. That would be great.
Sure. Also, since it's available to all administrators, would there be a case where you would look at edit warning or something along those lines? Like who admins trying to change the configuration and disagreeing on it?
Yeah, that's another thing that we've talked about as far as definitely we want to make sure that part of this project that we're working on is coming up with guidelines for usage. And so, the assumption is that any admin that is making a change has had like at least some initial conversations with other admins and community members to make sure there's, general consensus about any big change that is made. And there's other ideas that we've discussed about like, are there certain configuration changes that would need to be, require more than one person to approve it or something like that? Like, are there other safety measures that we should consider and put into place to ensure that, like one admin doesn't make a change that is a pretty big impact that other community members don't agree with. So still, like I said, very early stages, and some of this is still to be determined, but we're definitely thinking about that as well.
Also, okay, last question. You mentioned it's stored in a JSON file. Interface administrators are able to edit that willy-nilly, so would that cause a problem, or do you think it would be non-editable? Like the JSON file would be non-editable and it would only be configurable via the interface?
Yeah, I wish one of my engineers was here to answer that question, but I believe that it still will be editable by interface admins. It's not like we're restricting that in any way. We're just kind of like adding an ability to make some changes fairly easily by non-technical admins. Yeah. Thanks for your questions.
Hello, I'm Novum Lingwe. My question's for Sam regarding your tool. I wanted to give you my first impressions of it. I think it sounds like a really promising idea because, in my opinion, ClueBot, the anti-vandalism bot used on English Wikipedia, has been the most successful AI in the history of the movement. It significantly reduced vandalism on English Wikipedia. I go on to other anti-vandalism tools now, and I run out of things to do. It really changed the landscape. So I'm wondering how much your tool will be kind of copying the model of ClueBot. And I think one of the things that makes ClueBot really successful too is its very low false positive rate. You're planning to kind of have you'd probably train the model, and then you'd want to configure the false positive rate to be really low. And also, are you going to implement it as a bot or something else, like maybe an extension?
Yeah, I hope I remember each of those questions in turn. So yes, we are looking at all the other anti-vandalism bots that exist. ClueBot obviously is a big one. I think there's about another 8 or 9 across other Wikimedia projects. So really the bulk of the work that I've been doing so far on this project has been going and looking at those bots. How do they work? How are they configured? What does the community think of them? What discussions have happened around them? And that's really all been feeding into the configuration of this tool. So to give one example, I think ClueBot and some of the other bots will only revert one editor once every 24 hours, something like that, to avoid edit warring, So that's one of those things I thought, oh yeah, I hadn't considered that. Let's make sure that's on the roadmap as something we're considering. So yeah, huge inspiration from those. False positive, yeah, absolutely want to minimize that, obviously. Don't want to impact editors who were just here to make a good faith edit that was sort of erroneously picked up. Really, the goal there is for us to make the baseline of this tool and this model as good as possible, try and exclude as many edits that we know are likely to cause false positives. The growth team's structured tasks, for example, we probably won't operate on those because they're so constrained that they're unlikely to be bad. Or at least the model is unlikely to be able to tell if they're bad. So we'll do as much as possible to reduce that baseline, and then really it's up to the communities then to set those thresholds where they want them. Some communities are happier with more false positives as long as the vandalism is handled, and other communities are very strict. I know ClueBot is particularly strict at how low the false positive rate is. So we'll set the baseline as low as possible and then make sure that communities can sort of configure that however they feel comfortable. And the third question was?
Are you going to implement it as a bot or an extension?
Yes, it will maybe be both. It definitely, or it almost certainly won't be like a thing that's hosted on ToolForge or Cloud VPS, just because that's sort of a bit harder for us to manage, gives us less options. It may end up looking like a bot on Wiki, maybe more like the sort of abuse filter role account that performs blocks. So it might be like in an extension, but look like a bot. But that's still very much like a thing that we need to figure out. Our team's engineers have said, sounds like a good idea, and then haven't looked into it in more detail yet. So those will all be questions that we'll kind of be figuring out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, hello. I also have a question to Sam. When I was sharing information about the project of auto moderation in my community, one of the criticisms that arose that it sort of copies already existing system of ORES. So what's the difference, and what's the relation with that?
Yeah, that's a great point. So ORES, I don't know if anyone from research is in the room because they could speak to this better, but as I understand it, ORES is kind of a set of models. So there's a bunch of different machine learning models. The ones that are used in sort of recent changes are like the damaging model and the model that tells you if it's a good or bad faith edit. That system is being deprecated. There's a new platform called Liftwing that all those models are being migrated over to. And in particular, the damaging models, the good faith models, are being replaced with these new models that we're using. So the new models will look very much like the old models, and many of the tools are changing from ORES to these new models. And so we're just going to jump sort of straight to the new models rather than using the ones that are going to be deprecated.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
We've got about 5 minutes. I wonder, Peter and Jasmine, do you have any questions for the room? I'm aware that sort of Kirsten and I can kind of mingle afterwards, but this is your opportunity to ask any sort of open questions that are on your mind.
I guess so it was nice to hear about the idea of connecting warning messages, especially if you have an account already on a different tool. We've been doing research on comparing other tools to see as we, build out something more robust to bring over. And so I'd be curious to hear from folks if there are elements from Huggle, Twinkle, SW Viewer, anything else that are really important to them, and they're like, I'd really like to see these elements in the app.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I saw some mumbling. Do you have thoughts?
Hi. Just some background. I'm currently the lead developer of Ultraviolet. It's a counter-vandalism tool on the English Wikipedia. So I'm definitely down for the idea of having all of these counter-vandalism tools interconnect. Actually, that's one of the things that I really wanted to do is most of the warnings and the revert reasons that we have right now, they're very fragmented and they differ based on the tool that you're using. So at least from our side, we'd love to have this connection between tools so that not only does it stay the same for all the tools and so that it stays standard for the entire wiki, but it's also a good way to make sure that the same set of warnings and revert reasons are vetted by the community and they agree with it, and it's not going to cause any problems in the future. And Novem is here, so he's one of the lead maintainers of Twinkle, so maybe he has something to say as well.
I'm not trying to put any tools out of business. I just want to say that before.
Go ahead.
You have any questions for me? What was the question again?
Well, the original question was, are there elements from other tools that should be included in the app? I actually like the way that the question was answered, like the alternative way the question was answered, of like, how can we actually connect some of these tools so that we are able to reuse things like warning messages. And so if there's other ideas you have like that I'm definitely happy to hear. And also I hope that somehow I can get both of you all's information so we can figure out how to collaborate.
I'd say reusing the messages shouldn't be too hard because you could program in the list of standard warning templates. What kind of features do you already have in the app for anti-vandalism? Do you have rollback yet? Do you have stuff like that? Is that what you're going to be working on?
Yeah, we currently have rollback, we have undo, but those are on watch list pages. And so for the patrolling tool, it'll just be allowing it for a feed of recent edits, and then it'll be adding it for warning. But something that we did do some research with current folks who have rollback rights. And one of the things that they said is for like more large language wikis, they do have really good like warning templates. And then what's happening is for other languages, they end up having to just copy what they see on some of the large language wikis. And it would be helpful to have some of that stuff already preloaded in their languages. And so that's one of the things we want to try to help to address.
Community configuration.
Yeah, one of the downsides to community configurations is the apps can't use it, but maybe in a future version. But yeah, that would be awesome, right?
Yeah, good.
Community configuration 2.0. That is, yeah, we want to make sure that that is one of the things that the new version of community configuration can solve, that the mobile apps could take advantage of it.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges, though, to support all the language wikis. You do need to add a lot of configuration options and feature flags and stuff like that. You'd have to have a way for them to kind of pick what warning templates they're using, and hopefully they'd be the same types of warning templates. We probably have hundreds on the English Wikipedia. I don't know if they'd always correspond one-to-one, so some thought would need to be given to that.
Yeah, definitely.
There's also for other wikis that for English Wikipedia we use a 5-tiered system, or technically 5 tiers. There's level 1, 2, 3, and 4 based on how more likely bad faith it is, and then there's the 5th one, which is like stop immediately. And this system doesn't really transfer, or some wikis have this system as well, but some of them just have especially for smaller ones, is the only thing they have is like stop immediately because they block you instantly. So I think finding a way to have like all of these warning templates sync together and have them to being able to think of a way to not only just have the warning templates, but also like be able to support how the other wikis do it as well. And especially since, you know, they kind of do their own thing, so we'd want to, as much as possible, like still let them do their own thing even after we've made all of this connecting and integration and everything.
Yeah, y'all, please, if you can get my email from Sam or Kirsten, I'd love to continue talking about this, especially I know you said going based on bad faith, and I know that we're switching, some folks will be able to use the legacy API for ORs for using good faith and damaging, but I know they're encouraging folks to move over to this new revert risk model, and so I wonder also how that will play into the levels of warning, and so also thinking about that so we have uniformity would be great.
Yeah, we got to wrap up. The clock says 3, 2, 1 seconds right now. So thank you, Peter and Jasmine, for joining. Thanks, everyone, for coming to the session. This was a super useful discussion. If you're interested in Peter's presentation, he's about to give you even more detail in the same room right after this, so stick around.